I just think that's hilarious. Combining some classic musical tunes with the Wilhelm scream. Welcome. This is the Fright Club podcast. I'm George Wolf.
I'm Hope Madden.
And we are from madwolf.com. Go there, hopefully, for all your movie reviews, including Batman versus Superman. I'm one of the few that liked it. But every week we get together and have some fun with the horror genre, our favorite. And that's what we're doing this week again. And last week was music. This week is music. And we're kind of continuing that theme. But we had fun last week with rock stars in horror.
That's right. And I want to thank everybody who commented. And our old friend Stephen Perez, he pointed out Monster Dog. He would like to have heard us at least discuss Monster Dog. And we probably should have at least brought it up. So our mistake.
More Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
Alice has been getting a lot of love here lately.
Yeah.
On the Fright Club. Now, Stephen Perez, is he the Clowns Have to Burn?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
That's your new name, Stephen. I'm sorry. Clowns are evil. Burn them alive guy. Because that's a great quote.
But we also want to point out, so a lot of people, including the film He Never Died, retweeted us.
Yeah.
I know and I didn't do it on purpose just so that they would do that, but I did tag them just in case they wanted to.
Well, no, because I know you liked that movie.
Yeah,
a
very
lot.
much.
So it's not brown nosing, but we do appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now that was a fun one. And we're going to continue that musical theme with our favorite horror musicals, which is kind of funny because I'm the musical fan of the two of us.
Yeah, I hate musicals. Yeah, I do. In fact, I was the one screaming in that intro. No, just kidding.
No, that's the Wilhelm scream. I used, if you didn't know, the beginning there, of course, was I Dreamed a Dream. That's Patti LuPone from the original Broadway cast of Les Mis. And then Betty Buckley from the old Eight Is Enough.
And Carrie.
Doing Memory from Cats. There's a reason I used that one. We'll get to that. And then, of course, Idina Menzel, Defying Gravity from Wicked. And it's funny when you've pointed out to people before that I like musicals. I think it was when the Les Mis movie came out, and you were on some panel, and you made a comment about, oh no, George really looks forward to that, and somebody went, yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. Not a lot of people think you're like the musical type, but he's dragged my ass to plenty. And the one I hate the most, I got to tell you, I hate Wicked.
Really? I like Wicked.
And you know why? I've told you this before. The reason I hate Wicked is I love the Wicked Witch of the West. She's one of my all-time favorite characters. You know what? I don't want to know that she's really good. I don't want to know. I like her bad.
Okay. Yeah, I do like that one. I still Les Mis is my favorite.
I know.
And I don't like all musicals,
No.
but there's some good ones there. And I'll be honest with you, I really don't like Cats.
Thank God.
I use that song for a reason, as I said, we'll get to. But I've seen it a couple times and really don't care for it.
I never had to see it, so thank you.
But I digress.
You do.
This is still about musicals,
It
though.
is, though.
But about
It is.
horror musicals. And believe me, we'll get to a couple that I don't like at all. One in particular, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you're a longtime Fright Clubber, you know exactly the one I'm talking about. So is that all the pre-business? We got any more pre-business before we get to the countdown?
Well, I should probably point out that we had said we were going to do coming of age horror this week, and when I finally put the list together, I looked at it. We have talked about almost all those movies so often, and especially lately, that we're going to put it off for a few weeks. But I want to point out that our fellow Golden Spiral Media podcaster and also senior Aussie correspondent Corey Metcalf, he had some thoughts of a couple of good ones, and we will keep them in mind because we will eventually do it. But he recommends Scream, which is a fine idea, and also Let Me In, which is an even better one.
Oh, yeah. Definitely one of my favorites. And, of course, we'll give another shout-out, another plug for the next Fright Club live event, which is coming up here soon. It's going to be April 13th. Is that correct? April 13th?
Yes.
At the Gateway Film Center, we are going to count down our favorite Korean horror movies. And, man, there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
That's going to be a great countdown. And then we're going to show one of the best ones, A Tale of Two Sisters. And I know a lot of people not only haven't seen it on the big screen. I know a lot of people I've been hearing from haven't seen it at all and are very geeked.
Yeah, this is the opportunity because it is such a gorgeous, just visually compelling. You must see it on the big screen if you have a chance. I cannot wait to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
That's going to be a lot of fun. And, of course, we will record the podcast live beforehand. We'll do a little happy hour first, then do the podcast with a live audience, which is always a blast, and then show that movie. And you know what? I just want to give fair warning. There is probably a better than average chance we will have to take next week off of the podcast because the studio that we record here is being totally redone. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get some studio time. So what we will do maybe is just get together and talk really loudly. and you might be able to hear us. That's going to be our podcast. But yeah, we may not have studio time, so we may have to take a week off. But we'll be back, and we'll be back ready with the live show on Fright Club Live. So all that is down the road, but we got to get to the musicals. Our top 5 favorite horror musicals, and this one, I love this countdown because it has a lot of 70s in it.
Yes.
Which is great. And we're going to start out in 1974, Phantom of the Paradise.
And now on NBC Saturday Night at the Movies, Kiss meets the Phantom.
No, that's not it.
Sorry, I had to throw some Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park in there. Oh, my Lord. Oh, awful. I remember that was in the middle of Kiss Mania, and they had that, and it was just ridiculous.
I have honestly no idea what you're talking
that was
about.
just my little funny. Let's move on. The Phantom of the Paradise from 1974. This is it for real.
20th Century Fox presents Phantom of the Paradise, a gothic horror story.
What was that?
The story of a sound, the man who created it, the girl who sang it, the monster who stole it, and the phantom who haunts the paradise, the ultimate rock palace. Phantom of the Paradise.
There really is the Phantom.
Yeah, this is the thing that shocks me. This movie won an Oscar.
That is shocking.
And it won an Oscar for the music, but I still find that shocking. I mean, it was just, 1974 was just insane as far as I can tell.
Yes, it was.
Just as far as I can tell, just crazy whatnot. And this is Brian De Palma. And, and it's a mishmash of Phantom of the Opera and Faust and Rocky Horror. And there's a little Frankenstein in there. And there's even a little bit of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari in there. And it's just all smashed together with this musical sort of number. It's just bad. I'm going to tell you, it's just bad. It's campy.
So campy. In fact, it almost looks like they're trying to capitalize on Rocky Horror or something. I don't know. I assume Rocky Horror came out before this.
No, actually. Well, I mean, they're about the same time, 74, 75.
Well, I mean, at least the stage show, Rocky Horror.
No, absolutely.
Because
that would be true.
It's so campy. That character Beef.
Oh, yeah. He's absolutely based on Frankenfurter. There's
my Lord.
Yeah, there's no way around it.
But the main dude in this, talk about the music, is Paul Williams.
Right.
Who I think has made some sort of deal with the devil and doesn't age at all.
Actually,
this guy should be like 200 years old, and he's still winning Grammys working with Daft Punk a couple of years ago. He's amazing. And he's in this movie. He did the music. It's funny because especially when he's walking around and all these women are just fawning all over him. The guy's about 2 feet tall, but I remember him growing up in the 70s. He was everywhere. He was on the Love Boat. He was on the Hollywood Squares.
Muppets.
He was on the Muppet Show. He did all sorts of music for everything. He was everywhere, and he still is.
Well, and, the interesting thing about what you said is that his character in this movie has made, for a long time you think he is the devil, but in fact he's not, but he's made a pact with the devil so that he doesn't age, which is really funny when you look at this movie like 40 years later and think he looks exactly the same.
He does. It is amazing. And the funny thing, the reason I used the song from Cats there in the beginning, it's sung by Betty Buckley, who I said was, of course, she's the gym teacher in Carrie, which was directed by De Palma, but also she does a lot of the singing in this movie. She auditioned for a role in the film, was not cast, but De Palma, knowing she has such a great voice, called her back, and so a lot of the voice you hear in this movie is sung by Betty Buckley.
That's interesting because it's Jessica Harper is the star,
right?
And I assumed that she was cast because she's also the lead in Suspiria, and she is a theatrical person. She's a song and dance person, and so that makes sense that she plays a ballerina in Suspiria and she plays a singer in this. And I have to assume it's the only reason she was cast in either movie because she's god awful as an actress, just flat and.
It could be a lot of background work or whatever. But I know Betty Buckley, I guess, was used a lot for her voice work in this, and also talk about singing. Apparently, Linda Ronstadt auditioned for Jessica Harper's part.
Oh, they should have gone with Linda Ronstadt.
Well, that's a voice, my Lord.
It sure is. And I have no idea if she can act, but I do know Jessica Harper can't.
Yeah, and you might notice, too, if you watch this movie, the introductory voiceover is a Rod Serling cameo, which is incredible. How'd they get Rod Serling to do that?
I don't know. It's funny. I rewatched it here recently, and just by, sort of force of habit, I assumed it was an impersonator. Because just like if you heard an Orson Welles-like voice today, you would think it was just because it's a common impersonation. Then I realized, no, it's 1974.
Right.
That's really him.
Rod Serling, yeah. And it's just such a crazy, campy movie. We talked about the character of Beef. He's played by a longtime character actor. You'd know his face, named Garrett Graham. Now, his singing voice was dubbed by a guy named Ray Kennedy. Now, I haven't been able to prove it's the same Ray Kennedy. I spent 20 grueling years in country music radio, and Ray Kennedy was a one-hit wonder guy. He had a song called What a Way to Go that we used to play. I don't know if it's the same guy. I wasn't able to prove that. It might have been the same dude because he obviously was a singer and a songwriter. But Garrett Graham, yeah, just so campy. That's all you can think of when you watch it is he's been watching Rocky Horror.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the whole movie is high camp.
High camp. And the record label in the movie is called Death Records, but originally they wanted to call it Swan Records, Swan Song Records, which they couldn't use because that was Led Zeppelin's record label, and they were going to sue them. I guess originally they almost used it, and they thought, we'll go to court, we don't care. But then they changed it to Death Records. Well,
the Paul Williams character is named Swan, so it doesn't make that much sense that it's called Death Records, to be honest with you, but whatever.
They didn't want to get sued. So number 5 and our favorite kind of horror musicals, because we acknowledge it's a bad movie, Phantom of the Paradise. And moving up to 1977 for number 4, and this is the one. You know what? I'm just going to be quiet and let you talk about it because I've mentioned how much I do not like this movie from 77. It's Houseu. House.
I see in your eyes where tomorrow is hiding in my heart. There's a bell ringing loud at the touch of your lips. Down the rainbow, I'm sliding. Little arrows keep falling as thick as a cloud.
All right, I said I was going to be quiet, but I fully realize I'm the odd one out. I don't think anyone has agreed with me on this. Anyone has come to and said, yeah, I agree with you, this sucks.
No, it's much beloved.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Take it away.
It's much beloved, and it's campy as well. Although, if you're going to mix horror and musical, in all likelihood you're going to get camp. There are a couple that we'll talk about in a few minutes that didn't make the list that don't mix the two, and it doesn't come off that well. It's very hard to do a straight up scary movie and then break into song. It just doesn't seem to work. This one is, it's just so surreal and goofy. And it's definitely a comedy. There's no even question that it isn't a comedy, and it's not particularly scary, but Lord, is it a bloodbath? About 5 schoolgirls who go to stay at Auntie's house for their spring break or whatever break it is. And, just these silly fake backdrops and puppets and pianos that will eat you. And then the 5 girls, each one has a name that just reflects what their character is. Like Mac, for example, is the big eater. There's Glamour and Melody. I mean, it's intentionally goofy, but it's the humor is so surreal and macabre and super weird. It has a very Pee-wee's Playhouse feel about it that I think is, compelling and fun.
Okay. And I guess this was the director's first feature, had only directed commercials before this. So that's, I think it shows. But as far as really, if you can find any meaning in this, what do you think? I know people have said it's sort of a coming of age type of thing. Do you think that has underneath all this shenanigans? Is it a coming of age tale?
Yes. You could definitely see that. And, almost any film whose protagonist is a group of schoolgirls, that's going to be, some pivotal experience in their life is going to move them toward adulthood. So
and then you've got the one guy who's always talking about bananas, and there's a, obviously a phallic reference there. And then he turns into bananas. So I'm just... I'm trying to talk very seriously about a man turning into bananas, and you're laughing.
You weren't going to talk.
I'm not. I'm searching for someone to back me up here. If you don't like, just one person out, just one Fright Clubber. Tell me.
We all love this movie. We all love it.
Oh, and that is number 4. Anything else to add? Because I have nothing.
Well, actually, I just wanted, before we move on to number 3, I thought, maybe people don't realize how many horror musicals there are. There are actually quite a few. And not all of them are good. Most of them are not. Little Shop of Horrors, for example, which is, most of the films on this list you would barely really consider horror. I mean, they're not, you know, but horror musicals, like we were saying, they're mostly going to be comedies for the most part. But Little Shop of Horrors, the remake, is the least horrific of them. But it's still a very fun movie, and it's got some great songs in it. And again, I don't like musicals, so the fact that I like it, I think, must speak to its glory.
That one, I
way.
really don't care. But aside from Steve Martin and Bill Murray.
Oh, yeah, my God.
But I really don't care for it that much.
Yeah.
But Levi Stubbs' voice I love.
Yeah.
But as far as the songs and the story, really don't care for that one that much.
You know, and then, I mean, there are a couple, there's one called Dead and Breakfast, which is just borderline a musical, but it's pretty fun. It's a fun one. And, of course, the brain trust behind South Park did Cannibal, the musical, which I got to tell you, they do musicals better than most people do.
They do. They really do.
But that movie's not any good. And the other one that is no good is Repo, the genetic opera.
I remember watching that.
Jesus, that's bad. Ooh. It's just so over the top and self-important, and it doesn't know to be a comedy. And so I think that's one of the reasons it doesn't work. Don't Go in the Woods is another one is bad. It's like Glee and a woods slasher, and that's not good.
And that's sort of the same MO with Stage Fright
exactly.
that Meatloaf was in.
Yeah, Stage Fright is actually more like Wet Hot American Summer.
Right,
if it were a slasher. And I could have gone behind that. But again, it also doesn't, it takes itself too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think there's only one movie on this list that takes itself seriously and still comes off well. So I think that it's a very difficult thing to do if you're going to be a horror and a musical film at one time to not at least try to be funny. But that's, it's just me.
Yeah, and that's going to be the next one from number 3. And we go from the 70s all the way to 2007. And it's the movie version of Sweeney Todd.
15 years dreaming I might come home to a wife and child.
Benjamin Parker.
No Parker. Sweeney Todd now.
I will have vengeance. I will have salvation.
You're poking mad.
The years no doubt have changed me. How about a shave? At last, my arm is complete again.
I'm not sure how many people realize how old a story that is, Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber.
Oh, it goes back to the 1800s.
Yeah, it was a penny dreadful.
Yeah.
So it does not predate Frankenstein, but it predates Dracula by decades. And it has been a Broadway show. It's been a TV show. It's been a BBC show. People have made it and remade it, and it's just so weird. And of course the Tim Burton film is based on Stephen Sondheim's 1979 musical version of Sweeney Todd. And if you're not familiar, I don't know why you wouldn't be, but it's about a barber who lives upstairs from Mrs. Levitt, who makes meat pies. So the barber supplies the bodies and Mrs. Levitt supplies the pies. It's very efficient.
Yeah,
it's a weird story.
Yeah, it is. And when it was on Broadway, it was Angela Lansbury and Len Carew. And it won all sorts of Tonys. Stephen Sondheim did the music, and I know you're not a fan, but he's incredible. And he's also a little hard to work with. I mean, he's very, very protective of his properties, and he was very concerned about who was going to get cast in these roles, especially he was concerned about Johnny Depp, because at that time, Johnny Depp now is known more of, he also does music, but not at that time.
Right.
I mean, in Crybaby, he did not sing.
No.
But Johnny Depp impressed Stephen Sondheim enough, and that's tough to do, and got the thumbs up to go ahead with this movie. And apparently now, Sondheim is a very big fan of the movie.
Tim Burton is very, very definitely ups and downs. I mean, there's some really rock bottom lows with Tim Burton, and I think most of us think that Tim and Johnny should maybe separate ways. Like but this was for me a high watermark, not maybe the high watermark, but it reminded you of how great their movies can be. And as we've mentioned, I do not care for musicals. This was long, and I thought I would hate it. I think I saw this 3 times in the theater.
Yeah.
I loved it.
It's great.
And you know what? Say what you will. I think this is my favorite Johnny Depp character. I think this is my favorite Johnny Depp performance. And he was nominated for an Oscar for it.
Yeah, he does a fantastic job with singing as well.
Yeah.
He really does, because Sondheim songs are not easy to sing at all. I mean, he is challenging. And The one thing about Tim Burton, and you will appreciate this, maybe one of the reasons that you liked it, he insisted the film be more bloody. I mean, he made it more bloody than the story that was on Broadway. And he insisted, and it works.
It does work, and Helena Bonham Carter is great, and I think that she's wicked and evil and believable in that role of somebody who would make pies of humans. But she also there's a tenderness about her at times. There's a longing as she looks at Sweeney Todd, and then there's a little boy that there's a tenderness about it that I think adds layers to an otherwise straightforward evil character. But Alan Rickman.
Oh. So great. Well, back to Helena Bonham Carter for a second. Of course, at the time, she was... Are they still together?
No.
Okay. Well, at the time, she and Tim Burton were romantically involved. So, to get around the nepotism, I guess she sent Sondheim 12 audition tapes of her singing to get the thumbs up.
Wow.
Not to just think, I'm only getting this role because of Tim Burton. So, yeah. So he approved both of them, and you're right. Alan Rickman is just fantastic.
And the duet, the Johnny Depp Alan Rickman duet, is just haunting and just glorious.
Yeah, and then you got in a supporting role, you got Sacha Baron Cohen, who is great.
Yeah,
and he I guess took extensive lessons to shaving and use those blades, whereas Johnny Depp, I think a lot of the ones he used were apparently and they were mechanical. That he was not as adept at using the actual razors. But I guess Cohen really got into it.
There's at least the one scene, like the very first scene where he's back to and he's got his razors and he sort of, you can see it all click together in his head what he's going to do, and he just flips one up high in the air, and you just think for just a second, Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
Just for 1 second, it was like, there it is again. Yeah.
And you know who else has a great small supporting role in this is, why can't I think of his name? The guy that starred in Mr. Turner.
Timothy Spall.
Who's
so great in every single thing.
And he's great in this too. So, yeah, all in all, and it has such a, I guess you could call it a Tim Burton look about it.
Yeah.
But it's so perfect for the content.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's this, it really plays well with Tim Burton's just macabre sensibility, and I think that his quirky way makes the film feel fresh, not stale, the way a 1979 musical Move to the Screen can potentially feel. I mean, obviously it can be done well. The Les Mis that they made a couple years ago, Tom Hooper made, was brilliant. It really was. But I just think that Tim Burton did a beautiful job with the source material.
Yeah, agreed. And the songs are great, and so many of the songs for time were left out. They had to cut a lot of songs, and
that's good.
and they did a good job with still making it flow, making the story, because that's not always an easy thing to do.
No, and I know that in the original the young love story has more prominence, and honestly, that's the only part of this movie I dislike. I dislike the young love story, but I love every other thing about this movie.
Yeah, 2007 Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street is our third favorite horror musical, and that moves us up to number 2. Why this is ahead of Sweeney Todd, I don't know. I'll have to ask somebody. And this is from 2001, The Happiness of the Category.
Because I love it. No, you're right. I mean, those two could have gone either direction. They really could have.
And it's not even close. I don't dislike this one nearly as much as Hausu. I mean, this one I do find some fun in.
Takashi Miike, if you're going to experiment, right? If you're going to experiment with something that's bloody and bizarre, he's the guy to go with, I mean, not all of his experiments work, but this one for me totally does. It's very rompy. It's lighthearted and fun and so heavy with a body count, and it does have a lot, I think, in common with Hausu, for that reason. It's just, it's a silly, goofy humor, but the storyline is more interesting.
Well, and to me, it's also interesting as the lineage of the storyline.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back, you can take it back, obviously, to The Sound of Music. But it's also started with a remake of a movie called The Quiet Family from 1998. And then, shortly after that, in 2003, another version of basically the same story was made called A Mysterious Murder And then you've got this, which was a couple years before that. So it's really weird, this same story about a family opening an inn, and then they don't get customers for a while, and then they do, and then, oops, they're dead.
Right.
And then we have to cover them up. But this one adds claymation.
Yes.
And
volcanoes.
These volcanoes and these you're right, romping type of songs, and it's just it's nuts.
It is nuts, but for me, in the best way. It's actually it's really, really well written. There are layers and layers of crazy things going on, but it's never just throw away nothing. I mean, it's the story always makes sense, and you're constantly guessing as to why they're doing this and what's going to happen next. But I mean, it's really well written, so it's not. Where he takes, I think, crazy leaps is with the presentation, how he's presenting certain things. And, and I think that there are times where I'm watching a movie and I will give certain directors the benefit of the doubt because I love them and I trust that what they're doing makes good sense. So, and that may be the case here. Maybe I give this more credit than it perhaps deserves because I'm all in with him.
Yeah. And well, neither one of us like The Sound of Music very much, but when you call this The Sound of Music with a tremendous body count, then your interest gets piqued a little bit. And yeah, we've talked about before how prolific Takashi Miike is.
Right.
Just cranks him out. You got to wonder, he's just, okay, on to the next project. And what made him think, all right, I'm going to do this, and just cranking it right out.
And you know what I think is particularly amazing about his productivity is that there's no formula. He never repeats himself.
Yeah.
And so you think that a film this bizarre, or as bizarre as something like Gozu or something, you'd think that it would have taken him a long time to figure out, let's try this. Like, let's add claymation. Let's do these things. And it just seems like, he just seems like a mad genius.
Yeah. Yeah, mad is right in this one. And that is number 2 from 2001, The Happiness of the Categories. And that can only leave room at the top for, you probably know, you should know, from 1975, the iconic Rocky Horror Picture Show.
You've never seen anything like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is wonderfully weird.
They're probably foreigners with ways different than our own.
It's fabulously freaky. It's a trip to transsexual Transylvania. The Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Great Scott!
So give yourself over to absolute pleasure. See the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
This is a perfect movie. It's just a perfect movie. And it's on HBO now all the time for no reason I can think of, unless it's just to make me happy in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
It's one of those, no matter where I tune in, I'm in. I'm in. And I remember when they first, they put out on VHS or something back in maybe the early 90s or something. I remember thinking to myself, who would want to watch this at home by themselves? It's such an event film. And I had seen it so many times from the time I was very small. I could not wait to go see this movie in the theater with everybody. And of course I've seen it just a million times, and it is a really fun experience. But the thing is, when you watch it, just sit in your living room and watch it. It's a great movie.
It is, and of course you find yourself yelling at the TV.
Of course,
the man has no neck, and things like, and well, you don't have bread or toast to throw at the screen or anything like that, but you find yourself just doing that if you've ever gone to any of these midnight movies, which are such a hoot, and it built the cult of this thing through the years now that it's just become just the incredible, legendary piece of pop culture that it is. And it's one of the fascinating things I didn't know about this movie until just a few years ago, that this movie actually is the beginning of quote-unquote Easter eggs in movies. Where little hidden type of things in movies, they're called Easter eggs because of this movie, because they are actually Easter eggs were around the set, because they had an Easter egg hunt on the set, and they just left them there by mistake. And that, according to legend, that's how the Easter eggs got to be the term. Where you see, like in Pixar, has tons of them.
All the time,
all times of movies that you can trace it back to Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Nice. There are so many things that this movie did first. And the cast, of course, is great, and the music is great. And I had this soundtrack forever forever and ever and ever. I love every song on here, and I had a cover album you bought for me one time and then hid so I couldn't hear anymore, and it was punk bands. So all these different punk bands doing these songs. The songs are great, but let's be honest. I mean, the staying power is the Tim Curry.
Tim Curry.
Tim Curry is
incredible,
perfect in this movie. He's Oscar worthy in this movie.
The whole cast is great, but
yes.
he is. This movie wouldn't work unless Frankenfurter is as much of a presence as Tim Curry made him.
Oh my God!
You can't imagine anybody else.
No,
anybody else. He's fantastic, and he's just from the very first image of him, right away when you see him, he's weird looking. But then, of course, when he throws open the cape, and she faints, and they're all just freaking out. It's an incredible performance. And apparently now, I guess he's had some health problems.
Yeah,
but they're gonna do a remake, right, for TV.
Yes.
I think it's for TV.
It could be.
And I thought that he was going, because I believe he's in a wheelchair now because of a stroke. I thought, well, then he'll be playing Dr. Scott, but you tell me no.
He's going to play the criminologist.
Nice.
Yeah, so that should be great, actually, because he has such a voice.
He does.
I just want to hear him talk all the time.
And apparently, Vincent Price was approached about being the criminologist in the original. And he wanted to because he was a fan of the musical, but had something else going on at the time. So it's Richard Gray.
Yeah, Richard Gray is in tons of 70s, 60s, and 70s.
Bond. He's a Bond villain?
Well, horror films.
Oh.
He's in a lot of Hammer movies. He's just a fun presence. I love having him in there. And honestly, for me, I think Vincent Price might have been too big a name.
Yeah, maybe so.
Obviously Susan Sarandon is a giant superstar, but she wasn't when she made the movie.
Right.
And this was before Meatloaf took off as well. And so now you just look back and who's your favorite character?
Oh, boy. I don't know. Probably, how can you not say Frankenfurter, really?
Yeah.
And it's funny, Meatloaf, I guess, had thought he was going to play both Eddie and Dr. Scott because in the stage show they had the same actor play both Eddie and Dr. Scott, and I guess he was disappointed because, and he has said that he told them they're making a huge mistake because that way, I guess on the stage show you could instantly see that he was his nephew,
right?
Because they looked exactly the same, and he says, "I would have been a great Dr. Scott." So it didn't work out.
The funny thing about that is, of course, he only has one song, Hapatutti, but if you get the soundtrack, his voice is everywhere. You can hear him on every single song.
Time warp all over the place. Because it's not as strong now because it's in his late 60s, but he had a tremendously powerful voice.
An incredibly strong voice. Actually, that's one of the saddest things about the film Stage Fright, right? One of the reasons I wanted to watch it is because he was going to be in it, and I thought, oh, fun, a horror musical with Meatloaf in it, and then he finally sings a song, and it just made me sad.
Yeah.
I was just sad to hear him.
Yeah, it's not there, but boy, he had it. It could just belt him out, and you're right. You can hear him all over that soundtrack, which I don't blame him.
Right.
You're going to get that voice, put it in there.
Right.
But especially, I can't even listen to Time Warp. You can hear him immediately.
Yeah, everywhere.
There he is. He's everywhere.
I also really love Riff Raff and Magenta.
Yeah.
I love those two characters so much.
Well, and Magenta, Patricia Quinn, she, in the very opening, she's the lip syncing the song. Yeah, because apparently she was upset. She didn't get to sing the song. She loved that song.
Oh, it is a great song.
But they had her. That's her lips, although it's not her lips on the poster. The lips on the poster were a model named Lorelei Stark.
Oh, okay.
Who was famous lips. She did no, seriously, she did billboards for famous rock stations at the time. But Patricia Quinn got to at least lip sync in the beginning.
And actually, as much as we don't like the movie, Rob Zombie had her in Lords of Salem.
That
was actually my favorite thing in Lords of Salem is that she was in that because I do love Magenta.
And here's another thing that I didn't, after seeing it many, many, many times, that I didn't realize about Rocky, Peter Hinwood, the actor that played Rocky. Of course, he is made by Frankenfurter.
Right.
He's not born, so he wouldn't have a belly button, would he?
No.
Well, the makeup, if you look close, he doesn't have one.
Nice.
They covered it up. Makeup,
nice.
They had a little patch to hide his belly button. So I thought, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But you're right. I mean, whenever it's playing, it's not the same thing to see it on a small screen, but it's just so much fun. You got to leave it on all the time.
Yeah, I never turn it off. Yeah, I love every song. I love every scene. I love every character.
And it's one of those where I just find myself, I'll just say it in general, just out and about. We'll just go back to the car. We'll just say where we are. Things like that.
I want to say this. This is my favorite piece of trivia. So the Swan Mansion, the Swanson, as they refer to it in Phantom of Paradise, there's just one cut of it that is the outside of Frankenfurter's. When they say there's a light over in the Frankenstein place, that's the same. You just watch it; it's the exact same building. You know that it is, and of course everything else is different because that's all they used in Rocky Horror was just that outside one shot. But it's the same building. And there's a third movie that uses that same shot of that same building. It's called Vampiros Lesbos. FYI, it's where the Vampiros Lesbos live. Is apparently in the Frankenstein place.
Nice. Well, and also I was very disappointed. In the recent film Zoolander 2, which nobody saw except me, Susan Sarandon has a cameo. There are a ton of cameos in this movie. I mean, cameo after cameo. But at one point, she says, touch me. I want to be dirty.
Aww.
And you're like, oh.
But you know how she makes up for that? She's on a Sesame Street episode with the Count, and they run in the rain with newspapers over their heads, and they knock on the big giant door. 1, 2, 3 knocks. So
that's awesome.
It balances it out.
You know, it's like,
karmically.
I shouldn't be disappointed. I mean, she said the line. She was in the movie. If she thinks it's okay. But I just kind of went, oh.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that awful, remember that awful John Travolta movie? I know that narrows it down. Called From Paris with Love.
Yes, I do.
Remember that? And he's got the scene where he's eating a quarter pounder and he talks about the quarter pounder or the Big Mac or whatever. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, he says Royale with cheese.
Royale
which just
you're
makes
gonna
you weep.
Sully that?
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
Don't ruin it for us,
Don't
John.
do it. But anyway, so much about the Rocky Horror Picture Show is so much fun. And you know what? We'll be all in, I suppose, on this remake. We'll check it out.
Oh, yeah, we will.
Especially with Tim Curry is involved.
Yeah. And I think interesting, because, Frankenfurter is the one you got to have a trouble, yet worrisome casting,
Yeah.
but it's a transgender actress, so that's an interesting choice.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
But it's going to be hard to top. But then, you know what? We always thought no one could top Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Right.
And look what happened.
Yeah.
So, I'll reserve judgment until we see it, but I like that casting. That sounds good. So number one, of course, in the favorites horror musicals, the classic, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And you know what? If you disagree or if you agree with me about how Sue, I want to hear from you, please.
And I want you to just keep it to yourself.
No, I need some support here. Let us know. Twitter is always a great way to do it. We're at Mad Wolf, MADDWOLF. And you can hit us up on Facebook, too. We're Mad Wolf Columbus. And just the regular website, madwolf.com, not only for the Fright Clubs, but for all your movie reviews. And as I said already, we may have to take next weekend off because of technical difficulties,
right.
But we'll see.
And when we come back, actually, we had a really interesting topic thrown at us. Bridget at the Columbus Horror page on Facebook, she found a list of toilet-related death horror movies. And they want us to consider that one.
Okay.
But you know what it made me think of? And I think this one we may actually do. Just a WTF list.
Mm-hmm.
Just those movies that you're watching and you don't turn it off, but you just spend the whole time thinking, like, what is going on here?
Oh, there's got to be a ton of those.
Yeah, there's got to be. So that might be fun to narrow down. So those are options.
All right.
And while you're kicking around online, why don't you check out our senior Aussie correspondent, Corey Metcalf's Triple Cast, also on Golden Spiral Media, where you find our podcasts.
Yeah, always a lot of fun. So appreciate that. All the Fright Clubbers, all the friends, all the help. And maybe we'll see you next week. Maybe not. But if not, so the week after that will be the Fright Club Live.
Yes, it will.
All right. So there you go. So definitely we'll be back for that because that'll be April the 13th live at the Gateway Film Center, High Street in Columbus, Ohio. We're going to count down our favorite Korean horror. So that's going to be an awesome, awesome list. And we'll do that first, right after a little happy hour, and then go right into the movie. So hope you can make that. And until then,
I'm Hope Madden.
And I'm George Wolf. And this is the Fright Club Podcast.
Stay frightful, my friends.
And stay musical.